During a fishing expedition in the Arctic, a ship's crew spotted something unusual, a polar bear swimming toward them. It didn't seem near any larger plaques of ice, which concerned the crew, especially when it started to follow their boat. Knowing that polar bears often are solitary and avoid human contact, they knew that had to do something. The crew quickly lowered a rescue vessel to investigate further and prepared for an unpredictable and potentially dangerous interaction. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. They knew the risks they were taking, but they were sure the boat would be too high for it to jump on. That reason alone made half of the crew less worried, though that didn't mean their nervousness would completely disappear. There didn't seem to be ice that could support the animal's weight in their general proximity either, and, well, they couldn't just let it drown. When the lifeboat hit the water, the bear let out a soft roar as its strong paws and claws hauled it onto the lifeboat. "Luckily, that one can't deflate," Richard, one of the crew members, murmured, and a few other members laughed at the remark. The captain, Captain Reynolds, walked over to the edge, coming face to face with the polar bear. The animal stood on its hind legs, looking up at Captain Reynolds and the crew as it let out another, though now more prominent, roar. The captain's brow furrowed. "What is it doing?" he asked, but his crew remained silent, mesmerized by the animal in the boat under them. What could possibly be wrong with it? The polar bear just kept making sounds, though its roars weren't as loud. They stayed on course, but as they kept moving west, the polar bear became more frantic. "Halt the ship," Captain Reynolds ordered, and it didn't take long for it to do so. Then, suddenly, the bear did something they hadn't expected. It jumped back into the water, going the direction of which they came. This was certainly something strange. They thought to have saved the animal, but now the animal was leaving them again. Maybe it had needed a little respite from all its swimming. Regardless, Captain Reynolds felt like he was missing something as he kept a close eye on the animal. While most of his crew returned to their posts, he kept watching the animal, but instead of swimming away from the boat, it suddenly stopped. This piqued Reynolds' interest. What the hell was this animal doing? It turned slightly, its head facing the ship again as it let out another loud roar before swimming back to the raft on the water. Maybe it was hungry? It climbed on yet again, standing on its hind legs. Was it merely hungry? Did it view him or any of his other crew members as food? If it was hungry, maybe he could throw it a few of the fish they had caught. They had met the quota already. If this animal was this desperate, it wouldn't be that much trouble. Captain Reynolds quickly made his way to the storage. Reynolds made his way into the icebox, the name they had given the storage room for the fish they had caught over the past few days. He grabbed a rather large specimen and walked back to the side of the boat. He knew the polar bear would still be there with the sounds it was making. However, as Captain Reynolds threw the fish at the animal, it did something unexpected. It didn't do anything. It gave the fish a sideway glance, even sniffed it, but after doing so, stood back up on its hind legs and roared once more. Captain Reynolds' brow furrowed. If it wasn't hungry, then what did the bear even want? It frustrated the captain as he wanted to help the magnificent creature, but he was wise enough to not come any closer. He didn't have a death wish after all. In their stare down, the polar bear suddenly seemed to change tactics as it began pawing at the side of the ship. First, its paws scraped against the side of the metallic ship, a sound that was mildly annoying, to say the least, but that soon turned into something along the lines of banging. What did this animal want? Captain Reynolds knew he had to figure it out. "Steward!" Captain Reynolds exclaimed as one of his crew members stepped forward, looking wearily at the polar bear that was only 12 feet below them. "Yes, Captain, what can I do for you?" he asked, one eye on the captain and one on the polar bear. It seemed like not everyone was as enamored with the bear as the captain. "Get me the radio, will you? Either that or stay with the bear and keep a close eye on him to report back to me its behavior. We need to establish what it wants," Captain Reynolds said, and he saw Steward pale. I will get the radio, sir," he said as he tried to hold back his stammer but failed as he quickly scurried off to fetch the radio before the captain changed his mind. Captain Reynolds waited for Stewart to return as he kept looking at the polar bear, which was now pacing around on the raft. The animal even hit the water with its paw. Was it telling them where to go? The captain simply couldn't wrap his head around it. He had known a bit about polar bears, as they used to be his favorite animal when he was younger, but he had never read or heard anything about similar behavior to this. Stewart was swift and returned with a radio shortly after requesting it. Captain Reynolds turned it on and spoke, "This is Captain Reynolds from the Amberjack, requesting assistance for a polar bear situation. Over." He hoped a ship with experts would hear his plea. Miles away, aboard the Arctic Explorer, Dr. Lena Morgan and her team of scientists tuned in. "A polar bear acting out of the ordinary?" she mused. Her team, a mix of animal behavior specialists and Arctic researchers, discussed possible causes. Could be stress or environmental factors, one suggested. On the Amberjack, Captain Reynolds prepared for their arrival, clearing the deck and reviewing safety protocols. The crew, curious and uneasy, speculated about the bear's behavior. "Never seen anything like it," a deckhand muttered. Dr. Morgan responded, "Can you describe the bear's condition?" Reynolds replied, "It appears healthy but behaves oddly, standing on its hind legs, roaring, and pawing at our vessel." As the Arctic Explorer neared, the scientists readied their equipment. The Amberjack's crew made final preparations. "Maybe they'll figure out what it wants," someone murmured. A sense of anticipation filled the air. The Arctic Explorer docked, and Dr. Morgan's team boarded with specialized equipment. They spotted the bear pacing restlessly on the ice, its fur stark against the sea. Watching from a safe distance, Dr. Morgan raised her binoculars. "Its posture and eye contact seem intentional," she noted. The bear suddenly leaped into the water, climbed back onto the ice, and repeated the action. The scientists observed closely, questioning whether it was playing distressed or signaling something. Dr. Morgan recorded the behavior while her team took notes, analyzing every movement. "Every action might be a clue," she remarked, determined to uncover the mystery behind the bear's unusual actions. Gathered on the deck, the scientists debated the polar bear's unusual behavior. Could it be territorial or environmental? Dr. Morgan pondered. Theories ranged from stress responses to adaptive behaviors, yet none fully explained the bear's persistent actions. Then, a young scientist pointed out, "It keeps looking in the same direction." The repeated gestures raised new questions. Was the bear trying to direct them toward something? Dr. Morgan instructed her team to analyze its movements, focus on its frequency and direction. The team meticulously documented every motion, hoping to decode a deeper meaning. The scientists scrutinized every roar, gaze, and step. "Each action must have purpose," Dr. Morgan said. Yet, despite their efforts, the bear's repetitive behavior remained an enigma. Through their binoculars, they made a crucial discovery. It was a female. Could this be maternal behavior? Dr. Morgan suggested. The thought shifted their perspective. A somber realization followed. "What if she lost her cubs?" one researcher whispered. The possibility cast a heavy silence over the group. If true, her actions could be driven by distress or a desperate attempt to find them. The team discussed how maternal instincts might explain her movements. She could be seeking help, another scientist proposed. The revelation deepened their determination to understand her distress. Despite their findings, the full answer remained elusive. Captain Reynolds, influenced by their insights, made a bold decision. "Let's follow her lead." The Amberjack slowly adjusted its course, aligning with the bear's direction. As the ship cut through icy waters, uncertainty loomed. The crew exchanged glances, unsure what lay ahead, but compelled to trust the bear's instincts. "There's something she wants us to see," a deckhand murmured. Following an animal's lead was unconventional, yet it felt like the only logical step. The ship ventured into unknown waters, guided by the bear's silent insistence. Occasionally, she glanced back, ensuring they were still in pursuit. As the journey continued, a heartbreaking hypothesis emerged. "What if her cubs didn't survive?" a scientist whispered. The thought weighed heavily on the crew. Near a particular area, the bear's agitation grew, pacing faster, roaring louder. The change in demeanor signaled that they were nearing something important. What lay ahead remained uncertain, but one thing was clear. The bear had led them here for a reason. Aboard the ship, anticipation mounted. The scientists analyzed maps and data, correlating the bear's behavior with their location. "She keeps looking in one direction," a scientist noted. This persistent focus suggested a clear intent. The direction led them beyond typical polar bear territories. "Why here?" Captain Reynolds wondered. The crew and scientists worked together, determined to decipher the bear's message. Then, a climatologist proposed a theory. Ice drift patterns might have separated her cubs. If true, this explained her desperation. "She's asking for help," Dr. Morgan realized. As the ship followed her lead, tension filled the air. Then, a lookout shouted, "Movement on the ice ahead!" Through binoculars, they spotted two small figures, her cubs stranded on a drifting slab of ice. The mother bear had led them straight to her young. Urgency took over as the crew and scientists planned a rescue. "We must act quickly but carefully," Dr. Morgan instructed. Captain Reynolds suggested using a raft. The mother bear instinctively climbed on, watching her cubs with anxious eyes. Carefully, the crew maneuvered toward the fragile ice slab. The rescue team worked with precision, reaching the cubs and gently securing them. Frightened but unharmed, they were lifted onto the raft. The mother bear let out a deep sound, a mix of relief and gratitude. Reunited, she nudged her cubs, checking them over. The crew and scientists watched in awe. Their efforts had paid off. Not only had they unraveled the mystery, but they had saved a family. Now they prepared to guide them back to safety, knowing they had witnessed something extraordinary. A mother's determination, the power of instinct, and the bond between human knowledge and nature's silent plea.